We are here with two very, very special guests, people I've known for probably close to 20 years, neighbors of mine in Teaneck. I have Esther and Rivka Herzfeld here in the Jewish Link studio or former conference room, and welcome to Esther and to Rivka.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
And we are here to talk about something really special that's happening. The Herzfelds are a very special family. I'm going to let them I'm going to let you guys talk about how special you guys are. But they're about to embark on a special campaign called Life Rewritten. I think you're basically all looked at it as going on tour. So the Herzfelds are going on tour. But let's hear a little bit about what going on tour, what Life Rewritten is, and tell us the Herzfeld story. Some of our community may know pieces of the story. I doubt anyone knows the full story or close to it, as close we're going to get to it. So, Esther, go ahead.
Well, the reason that the campaign or the tour that we're on now is called Life Rewritten is basically because I'm an English teacher, and
for a long time, I think.
Yes, a long time,
many decades.
And literature is very important to me, and storytelling is important to me.
And you're at Heichal now, of course.
I am at Heichal Torah.
But you've been I know it in many places.
Yes, I taught for 17 years at Central, Yeshiva University High School for Girls, where I had the pleasure of teaching your sister. And I taught for 20 years at Mayanot, where I had the pleasure of teaching your daughter. And
whoa, okay, keep the name dropping. That's okay.
Right,
I'm used to it. Yeah.
And so I thought about our own life story, and I often am impressed by the characters that I teach about. I emphasize, even at Heichal, I emphasize the role of strong women, strong maternal women, and the role that mothers play in the life cycle of a whole family. And I just thought about the irony of the inability for me to control my own story. And I analyze stories all day for a living, but yet our story was one that did not turn out as planned. And this happens to many, many people out there. Many people plan a life and they anticipate what their life is going to be. And many of us have our lives derailed. We're not the only one. We realize that. But it's profound and it's catastrophic to have 4 children who are all stricken with neuromuscular disease, and that's called Juvenile-Onset ALS, to have a husband who is also similarly stricken, although his symptoms are different.
Just want to let you know, when I first met you guys, your husband, Arthur, was in full prime. He was the president of our shul, and I certainly remember your husband getting up. It was probably when I first moved into the community. I remember when Arthur was like a force. He was a leader in the community, and I miss that Arthur. Just telling you that. I'm saying I remember him when he was, we just looked up to him and he was just a force. And I'm just saying I think his shul announcements were kind of what I remember when I moved into the community in the early 2000s. And I'm just saying I say Arthur was my first exposure to you guys.
Right. And Arthur misses the Arthur that he used to be, as we all do. So it's really been overwhelming and devastating. And sometimes I ask myself, what would our life be if it were normal? But then I put that away. There isn't really room or time or energy for that. And every single minute is a challenge. Every single breath that some of my children take. I call them children, but they are in their 20s and 30s, but they are my children. It's a struggle to breathe. It's a struggle to swallow. It's a struggle to move.
But just tell us, because I know people are not familiar. So a juvenile onset ALS means what for your family? Like, just tell, because not most people are not.
Yes, I'm taking for granted.
You're taking for granted. Most people are not familiar with Rivka, not familiar with your husband and the kids.
So everyone knows about ALS because of Lou Gehrig and Stephen Hawking, and that kind of ALS that they got, it was sort of indiscriminate, and it just sort of pops up for some people in their 50s, 60s, or even 70s. And that type of ALS is, it's fatal. My children had different kinds of symptoms, and they were analyzed and they were studied by neurologists for years. And they came up with a diagnosis that turned out to be wrong, and then another diagnosis that turned out to be wrong. And finally, just a few years ago, right right before COVID, they started at the NIH, where my family was being studied. They started honing in on what the neurons were that were affected. And they decided that because the neural pathways that are failing and degenerating are the same neural pathways as ALS, that they were going to call it a new kind of ALS, which is juvenile-onset ALS. It's not fatal, Baruch Hashem. One can live to be 98 or 100 years old, but with all the debilitating aspects of the disease, which are the difficulty swallowing, breathing, depending on the level of the degeneration. And so right now, it is a continually degenerative disease, and it attacks the respiratory system. It attacks the appendages, the outer appendages, torso less so. However, when all the other functions in the body are affected, it does end up affecting the torso as well. So my children are fortunate in that they can sit up. We don't know if that will continue to be, but they've completely lost their own independent use of their arms, their legs, fingers, toes. They can't do the functions of daily living by themselves. Now, we are so special that there are only about 100 known cases of this throughout the world.
Wow.
And 5 of them are in my family. It was discovered very late that Arthur is carrying this gene. It's autosomal, which means it only needed one parent for this to carry, and it carried. Arthur's sister does not have the gene. Her children are all perfectly fine and healthy, and this was a rate of not 1 in 4, 2 in. It's all 4 of them. It took us a long time to put the pieces together and to figure out what was happening with our kids, because at first they were just tripping and falling or dropping things. We thought,
I remember you guys walking. I remember you guys when you were younger. Sure.
Yes. Arthur and I used to sort of joke and tease Rivka for being clumsy because she used to drop things a lot. In retrospect, now we realize that this was the beginning of the degeneration of the muscles. Tzipora used to fall when she walked to shul, and Arthur told me, there's something wrong here. And I said, I bought her Shabbos shoes that were gorgeous. She loved them. They were too big on her. So I said, I stuffed them with tissues, and I think she's falling because the shoes are actually too big on her. And he said, no, Esther, that's not the shoes. There's something else going on here. So we took her to the pediatrician, our pediatrician, Steve Schuss.
This is how many years ago? This is
So Tzipora's 32. This happened when she was about 8.
Okay.
And so Steve Schuss recommended a neurologist at Einstein who was a specialist in neuromuscular diseases. She took all the tests, and the tests came out fine. And so at that time, they didn't have a name for the disease. They said it was consistent with a type of muscular dystrophy called Charcot-Marie-Tooth, that there would be a cure for it in 5 years. But of course, it was not Charcot-Marie-Tooth, and there's no cure for Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease anyway, one of the muscular dystrophies. And we were just puzzled. And for a while, it was just limited to Tzipora as far as we understood.
Tzipora's the oldest, right?
Rivka's
the oldest. Okay.
But it manifested in Tzipora first.
I'm sorry, can I cut in for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that something that people didn't necessarily catch on to, and I caught on to only later, is that there has to be some sort of hormonal link. I don't know what that could be, but the fact that all of us hit a decline at different ages and different stages, that has to be indicative of something. And it might just be our endocrine systems playing a part and the hormonal pathways starting to interfere with the neural pathways of our brains. I don't know, but
it did seem entirely odd possible that at bar and bat mitzvah age, they seem to fall off a cliff. A little bit of tripping, a little bit of falling. One time Tzvi was walking home with me on a Shabbos, and he kept tripping, and he said, do you think I have what Tzipora has? And I said, no, you're just not paying attention to the tree stumps, and you have to be more careful. And he said, no, I think I have what Tzipora has, because he was feeling something in his body that he was only 8 at the time. He couldn't describe it, but he knew that he didn't feel right. And at 6, Tzipora said, Mom, there's something wrong with me. And I said, no, there is. She was really super bright, still is, very precocious. She could read and write at 5, and no one taught her. And so she read Harry Potter, the first book of Harry Potter, at 5. And so I said, there is nothing wrong with you. And she said, no, there is. And again, I just don't think she had the vocabulary yet to explain what was wrong. In retrospect, we started putting all the pieces together. And there's a story that I tell often, and I'm going to tell it on the book tour, that was just profoundly moving to me in a very terrible way. Racheli was going to Camp Regesh in the summer between 1st and 2nd grade, and the bus stopped right in front of our house. I helped her, I was waiting with her at the bus stop. She got on the bus, and I saw that she was hoisting herself on the banister, because that first step is always very chunky, and she hoisted herself up to get onto the first step. And I thought, oh, that's funny. Tzipora used to do that when she was in 1st grade. And then I said, oh my God, this is not funny. This is not funny. Now I understand what I didn't understand when Tzipora was in 1st grade. And the bus closed, the door closed and pulled away. And I threw up in the street, because it hit me now that all 4 of my kids had whatever this was. And it wasn't even that bad at that time. They could still walk. They walked slowly. They walked with a limp. But, to have gotten to where we are now.
So you did tests on everyone, and they all came back with this.
Yes.
They all said this, it was some kind of this syndrome, so to speak. This.
Well, now this J.
I'm saying before the new diagnosis.
Before it was a mystery. It was a mystery, and there were many misdiagnoses.
There were many misdiagnoses, and also the fact is that Tzipora was the first one who got tested, because she was the first one who came down with symptoms, and nothing came back. It was inconclusive, and then I remember that actually, because I'm 9 years older than Racheli, so she was in 1st or 2nd grade, and I was off to my year in Israel, and during my year in Israel, I started to really notice. Actually, I have written about this just in my own private journals, and I don't think anywhere else, but the first time that I really started to notice that something was wrong with me was when I was graduating my Yeshiva high school for girls, and we went on a girls trip. And I don't remember where we went, but we had a fake prom, and everybody got all dressed up, and I had these very cute Vince Camuto heels, and they were only like 1.5 inches tall. And they
couldn't do the heels.
No, they were so beautiful. And I remember that we were doing simcha dancing, and somebody picked up the pace. And so we were going faster and faster, and I couldn't keep up. And so I fell, and then I couldn't get up. And in my mind, I was freaking out. My mind was racing. And all I could think was, I accepted an acceptance at Midrash Moriah, which was my dream school in Yerushalayim. I was going. I didn't know what to do. And all I could think to myself was, oh no, what am I going to do? And I thought maybe...
You were wearing heels at the time. So, yeah.
I was, but I thought that the best thing to do would be to hide it, because I figured that if I just powered through it, that if I were stronger and I just watched my step more, and if I didn't, wear heels, or if I, wore sneakers every day, and if I were just really, really careful about the way that I walked, then nobody would notice, and no one would be the wiser. And that's not what happened. People started to notice.
Told you made it through the year in Israel? I forget.
I made it through the year in Israel, but people noticed things. And my roommate asked me why I was holding my Brita pitcher weirdly. And I devolved, and I said, I'm not holding it weirdly. You're holding it weirdly, which makes no sense. And I freaked out. And I remember calling my mom and my dad after a teal, and I couldn't climb a mountain. And I was so upset, and I was devastated. And I remember saying to my parents, do you think I have what Tzipora has? And my mom and my dad sort of quietly, ironically chortled, and they said, yeah, of course you have what Tzipora has. And I said, what am I going to do? And they said, well, you're there and we're here and we can't really do anything to help you. But that to me, along with a conversation with my Rebbe and mentor, Rabbi Eitan Meir, who is still at Midrash Moria, I said to him, what am I going to do? And he said, well, Rivka, you don't know what this is called. And you have to find out all the information that you can.
Now we know what it is. It's not that easy to fight. It's not easy to fight at all.
So ALS is considered a death sentence. So you're saying it doesn't have it's not as degenerative as ALS?
So it's not as degenerative. Sorry, do you want to take this?
I think it is as degenerative, but it is not fatal.
It is not fatal because and I'm sorry, I'm going to bring people in the weeds here a little bit. The medical diagnosis that we have is that our sphingolipids, which people don't necessarily know about a sphingolipid, but a sphingolipid is essentially the messenger from the brain to any muscle group. I sort of characterize it like a Migdal Bavel situation. So the people were going to build a tower, and then at some point the message sort of got miscribble-babbled. That is sort of happening with our brain sending messages to our muscles. Imagine that our brains are sending the muscles messages in either Hebrew or English, because those are the languages that our muscles understand. And instead, the muscles are understanding English, Hebrew, but like also they're reading the messages from the neurons in Sanskrit.
Mm-hmm.
And so something is being lost in translation. And so our muscles can do the actions, but more slowly. Or our muscles can not do the actions because they don't understand Sanskrit, because Sanskrit is very different than Hebrew and very different than English.
But it's not, okay, I like that explanation. The Migdal Bavel is a nice explanation, but it's not affecting, thank God, like your speech. It's not affecting, which is muscular also.
It does affect speech. One of our kids is very severely affected with her speech and her swallowing. She wears a headset all the time so that people can understand her, because it has to do with the lung capacity. The lung capacity is very weak and the breathing is shallow, and so the voice becomes weak. But she often speaks with people on the phone or even in person. They don't understand what she's saying. Sometimes look to me and say, "What did she just say?" She'll say it again. She gets very riled up if asked to have a translator say what she just said. So it does affect speech, and it affects swallowing. It affects everything.
The one thing that I would say that it doesn't impact is our intellectual capability and our intellectual thinking. It doesn't impact that at all, at least to my understanding. And that is such a bracha. It really is, because imagine if we had these bodies that we can't control to the effectiveness that we want, and we also couldn't think and speak the way that we want and explain things the way that we want, and if we weren't coherent.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because they are, I say they're prisoners in their own bodies. And they can't do what they want their bodies to do, but they can explain everything that they need. And furthermore, Rivka has a graduate degree. Racheli is pursuing a graduate degree now in social work. Tzipora graduated at the top of her class. Tzvi graduated he was honor roll for all 4 years that he was in high school. And so their intellectual capacity is strong, capable as anyone else. Sometimes that can be torturous because they're so well aware of what's wrong with them and what's wrong with their bodies. However, on the bright side, and I am a glass half full type of person, on the bright side, it makes up for all the bodily atrophy. Right before my son's bar mitzvah, my mother was still alive. He once said to her, something like, my son is named after my mother's father. And my son said to her, but a deer is supposed to be quick and fast, and it's supposed to be able to run, and I can't run. I'm not fast. And she said to him, "You're not fast in your legs, but you're fast in your mind." And
which is true, by the way. And I know Tzvi, and he is fast.
yes,
No question.
and but that was a beautiful, and we didn't really even know what was wrong with anybody then. I used to tell my mother, yes, they're taking physical therapy and they'll get better. So she was just, placated with that. But I hope that he got as much nechama out of that as I did, because it is a torturous disease. It's torturous to to be in your 30s and not be able to zip up your own jacket or button your own shirt and feed yourself and cut your own meat and to be aware, I want to do this by myself, but I can't. And yes, they were all instilled with a spirit of independence. And even when Tzvi was first stricken and was already in a motorized wheelchair, people used to tell me, people who lived on Washburn and River Road used to say, "Oh, I saw Tzvi this Shabbos." But people in country club would also say, "Hey, I saw Tzvi this Shabbos." And I'd say, "How did you end up over there?" "Oh, he used to go to Englewood." Yeah. On Shabbos. So, he just had this spirit of can do.
Yes, I know he liked to test the limits of his wheelchair. I also saw him. Well, let's go to the history. So I remember the original house that you guys lived on the block by Rothwax. And I think it became clear about probably more than a decade ago that it wasn't the right house, or it wasn't.
We tried very hard. We loved it. We had moved from Colonial Court to the Schley Place house because we wanted to be nearer to Beth Aaron. And the walk was getting very difficult for some people. And we did need more space. And we intended to live on Schley Place forever. And we had pretty nice neighbors. And so we tried desperately to make the house work. But it was like just putting little corks in a dam that was going to burst. And we got the stair lift, and then we got a Hoyer lift, and then we got a ramp in the back, and then we got another ramp. But it was absolutely brutally uncomfortable. Having the stair lift was obviously a help, but it meant that Arthur or I, or after we hired aides, would have to lift the family members out of the wheelchair, put them in the stair lift, and at the top of the stairs, get them out of the stair lift, put them back in a chair. And that was becoming difficult. The bathtub shower situation was horrific. So we redid the shower, and that made it better for a while. And I guess we would have just continued to live there very uncomfortably. On Friday night, I used to have to bring like a big, big basin and, a couple of washing cups because we couldn't get the family members all in the kitchen at the same time. And so I used to just go around the table and have everybody wash. You could not be in the kitchen with more than one wheelchair. That created a lot of tension in the family. And we couldn't...
You're saying the family, you could not eat at a table together.
In the dining room, we could.
Okay.
But in the kitchen, if there was one person in the kitchen, there could not be anybody else in the kitchen. But Shabbos, yes, everybody could sit around the dining room table, but not one other person could make it in there. So it was just the six of us, which of course severely limited our ability to socialize because my family members couldn't get out to anyone else's house because of the stairs, and then we couldn't have anybody in. So the house campaign and being able to move into the house on Queen Anne Road now where we live, it took the pressure out of the pressure cooker. It calmed everything down. Tensions were released because there was no need to be fighting over, I got into the door first.
We couldn't even pass each other in the hallway in the old house.
No.
And I would like to say also that sort of timeline-wise, I was still walking in the Schley Place house. Tzipor was still walking in the Schley Place house. Racheli was in a little transport chair, and Tzvi was the only one in a scooter. So even with two walking children and two seated children, there was still not enough room, just timeline wise, so that you can understand. And now there's such freedom of movement in the Queen Anne Roadhouse. It's actually such a machaya. It's such a non-issue to pass somebody in the hallway, because in the old house, if you needed to pass somebody in the hallway, you sort of had to do like bumper cars.
What's beautiful about the house is that there are enough obstacles in my family's life, and there are enough obstacles out there in the open world, where you come to a restaurant and you realize you're not going to be able to get your kid into the restaurant. So we never make assumptions anymore. We always call ahead and ask, even to go to a wedding or something, is your venue accessible? But to be able to live in a house where the house is not an obstacle just gives you a completely different, sense of ease about your life. And even though there's nothing easy about our life, but the house has an open floor plan so that everyone can just get where he or she needs to go. And, the showers are handicap accessible. Everyone lives on the first floor.
Right.
So there's no issue of staircases and the inability to make it up the stairs.
There are 2 ramps. There's a ramp to the front door and a ramp to the back door. There is a facial recognition system for the front door, because people don't even necessarily realize that, okay, you can get in your house. How would we be able to move forward and turn a doorknob at the same time? This is something that people don't even think of. Or how would we put in the code, turn the lock of the code mechanism, push the door, and push the scooter?
Never thought of that before.
Right.
Didn't realize you had it. What about Shabbos?
Right. You don't have 3 hands.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
well, Racheli was able to get that through some of her funding. And so it's on all the time. We've been told that it's not really a question or an issue, but most people in the family prefer to use the back door on Shabbos because it's not hooked up to the back door. And certainly anybody who knocks on the door, come around back, because it's not all, for our family members, it's facial recognition, but it isn't for anybody else.
Right.
And most of our friends already know to come through the back door. But it's that also has made life just a little bit more bearable.
We just talk in broad strokes. So first of all, I was mentioning before, one of the ways I became aware of the situation was, I think we wrote our first article about the Herzfelds was, I think, about 10 years ago with the van campaign. So I think that's so. I now know you have a second van, which I just learned. So the house campaign was a community led. Okay, I know Rabbi Rothweck and others had a big role in it. I know they raised over $3 million.
Yes,
and so. And by the home is beautiful. I pass by it all the time. I'm just saying it's beautiful, and just I love seeing those ramps and whatever. It's a long story, but I'm just saying. But we definitely look to. I always smile when I pass by your home. So tell me where we are today, or just and really the reason why you guys are here, which is really the future of the Herzfeld family.
So we went from having an aide for 2 hours a day for one person to 8 hours a day for 4 people. We're now up to 22 hours a day of aide care, 7 days a week. And we have one aide, a male aide for Tzvi, and we have one female aide for the 3 ladies. The only reason that we only have 22 hours a week is because, honestly, sometimes I need a breather. I need to be able to just be myself a little bit, be a little less on guard and well-behaved around the aides. And I need that moment of release, or sometimes, as I said before, we had a family meeting. If we need to have a family meeting about something, or we want to talk about something that's private, I need to feel that there's some privacy. It's almost inevitable that in the 2-hour spate of time that someone's not there, we need the aide. Something happens and we need the aide. And you
are the aide.
I am, and I am also the second aide. We've interviewed some people who've come into the house and said, wait a minute, you want me to do this by myself? No, this is a 2-aide situation, and we can't afford it. And the government funding is not going to pay for that. Also, government funding pays for 40 hours a week. That we need round the clock help.
I'm sorry, can I just parenthetically say, I personally am part of a program that I use for work, because I am a working person and I work 40 hours a week. So my hours immediately get subtracted from the equation because I don't get other hours because I am what they call the grayest of areas, because I was told by somebody who worked at DDD. I was told by somebody who worked at DDD that I am an extremely complicated case because I am a working person, but I have a full disability and it is congenital, which means that it was from birth, but it didn't occur until I was 17. And all of those things make it exceptionally complicated for people to even understand.
Yeah.
I'm going to mention also something about the government, because we've been told repeatedly, why do we need community help when there's the government? Isn't the government doing anything? Shouldn't the government be doing more for you? If you've ever spent an afternoon at the DMV, you'll have an idea of how the government works. So one of my daughters, for example, another proactive daughter, took it onto herself to apply for DDD. She onboarded herself by herself, and she gets DDD benefits.
Just for people to know, DDD is a division of New Jersey's Division of Development Disabilities. As a special needs parent, I've dealt with them. And I'm going to tell you, what you're saying is not new to me, especially since I've been involved in building group homes.
Right.
Government is great, but they're not so great when it comes to, you're going to tell us what we're missing, but I know from personal experience, they're not so great when it comes to building building homes and renovations in homes. But I know on the service side, they're a little bit better. But no, keep going.
Right. Well,
Sorry.
on the surface side, so this is what happened. So our daughter was interviewed. She was asked, can you do X, Y, Z? And she answered all the questions. And she was put on a certain level. They have different levels of disability, and that, you'll get a certain benefit according to the level of disability, which does make sense. And so she got a budget, and okay, we're not kfuyei tov. Whatever the budget was, that's what we understood to be her budget. And a friend of mine who has a son with special needs said, I don't really understand why she is at this level when my son is way higher and his disability is far less severe. So I started inquiring, and one time I saw she started looking at her paperwork and speaking with her advocate. And because I'm an English teacher, I noticed immediately that the diagnosis that she had was incorrect. She was diagnosed with SMA, which is spinal muscular atrophy. My kids don't have spinal muscular atrophy. So I said, this is not your diagnosis. This must be the reason that you're not getting the proper benefit. So she spoke to the advocate. The advocate spoke to supervisors, and they said, it doesn't matter. And I said, that needs to be corrected. I think it does matter, because that other diagnosis will get you maximum benefits. We were invited to an appeal, again, only because of her perseverance. We were invited to make an appeal. We schlepped down to, I don't remember where, maybe Trenton. I really don't remember
or Patterson, I think.
Patterson, yes. And with all her equipment that was not fake, breathing equipment, speaking equipment. And she made her appeal. We were interviewed, and everyone shook our hand at the end and said, we think that this is going to go places. We had to wait 90 days. So for 90 days, you're still in, suspension. And after 90 days, her appeal was denied. And nobody could believe that her appeal was denied because her needs are profound. And so she was invited to give one more appeal. This time the appeal was going to be by Zoom. And so after the second appeal was denied, she was simply told that she would be moved up on the waiting list. So that instead of a 4 or 5 year waiting list to get the full benefit that she deserves lichatchila, it might be a 2.5 year wait.
Wow.
So that is just one slice of our experience. And so we can do all the yelling and screaming that we want to do. They're not going to budge, and they're not going to increase her budget. So it's not as easy as people on the outside would want to believe in their idealistic world of the support that government gives people, because it's very poor. Okay.
So what's the need that you guys have right now? Okay. Because I know that there was some money in the original campaign, there was some money set aside to kind of help with the future, but it was, and I think really the issue is that it's not enough to help
Correct.
Leo Levad. So that's, which is, I just want to hear, like, just let our listeners, watchers, know, like, what's the need and what you're looking to achieve in the next few months, the next year.
Right.
So.
Currently, I need $5,630 a week to pay the aides in the hours that they're working now.
And by the way, this is having cut down hours from people. This is having cut down hours that people are in the house. We are really scraping corners.
Yes.
And we are just having bare bones. But I'll say this, and maybe this is going to sound a little uncouth, but a person can't predict when he or she is going to need to use the restroom. And there's a certain dignity that we should be allowed and afforded by having an aide or somebody there who can help us on site, because it's not our fault that we can't function the way that Hashem intended us to.
But I've had experiences, especially since Shavuos, but it was happening every once in a while, where I needed $5,000 in the checking account that I could withdraw. And I'd get to the ATM and it was $14 in the account. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Because I can't tell the aide, sorry, I don't have it, because they will say, it's been nice knowing you. They're not there l'shem mitzvah. We took Rivka's money. We took some savings from Tzipora. We took savings from everybody. Tzvi, Rachel, we took savings from everybody until we were really down to the last bit. And so we said, what are we going to do? We have to get cash from somewhere. We're out of it. When we sold our house to move into Queen Anne Road, we were advised to put it into savings. And we really didn't, because we had been getting help through the Rabbi's Discretionary Fund and some other people. And on some levels, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to know that there are people out there who are willing to help. But on another level, I'll be honest with you, it feels terrible. And so for 2.5 years, we were able to live off the money that we had made selling the house. And it was wonderful. It was so liberating to me. And if my son wanted to go to a Knick game, I was able to take him to a Knick game. And I didn't have anybody looking over me and telling me, no, you can't do that. For my son, that's therapy. So now we're at the Shas Hadchak. We are so low on money. So we did start that chesed fund. We were about $100,000 in debt, in credit card debt and overdraft fees at the bank.
Is the main need to pay the aides, and also how much? So it's about $25,000 a month. You're saying,
yeah,
just to pay, and that's just
to pay.
Is that beyond what the government is helping you with?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a $25,000 a month need immediate. That's ongoing.
Every single month.
So we have the aid. The aid need is ongoing and very critical to the maintenance of the family. There are.
Yeah, I was going to say, what else besides?
There are some other therapy bills where you must know this, Moshe. Your insurance company, if it's a great insurance company, will allow you 30 therapy sessions for a year.
It runs out.
It runs out, and also. Some of our family members have experienced the insurance company cutting them off because they're not getting better. No, they're not going to get better. Our goal for physical therapy is to prevent the muscles from atrophying.
And maintenance.
Prepare the muscles that if by some miracle there's ever a cure, a serum, a something, that the muscles will be ready. And also, why would anybody who is experiencing muscle atrophy want to continue to have the muscles atrophy? One of the kids has been working with a hand physical therapist, and she's got a machine. I forgot what it's called.
It's called Helping Hands.
Helping Hands or something like that. And she's learned, again, with the machine, to be able to sign her name. Please be aware that the ability to sign one's own name is incredibly liberating, satisfying, gratifying. She wouldn't have been able to do that without the hand therapist. Medicaid won't pay for her hand therapist because she's not on the Medicaid roll. And Tzvi had a situation where he could no longer use the controller because of the muscle degeneration in his hand. And we took him to the Neuromuscular Institute in Hackensack, which is the agency, the institute that's working with our family very, very closely, monitoring our family, following up with our family, and doing research and moving the research along for the family. And the head of the research study there, Dr. Thomas, he wrote him a script for PT. And about 6 months later, and Tzvi was taking the PT, and suddenly, and he was wearing his hand in a brace, suddenly Tzvi was able to use the controller. So it had been about 6 months, maybe even longer, since we had seen Dr. Thomas. And he said to Tzvi, "Are there any changes since I last saw you?" And he said, "Well, I can use my controller now." And he said, "Oh, that's wonderful. We weren't expecting to hear that. That's fantastic." And all the members of the team were looking around. And he said to Tzvi, "Why do you think that is?" And she said, I don't know. And then I said, "Well, maybe it was from the PT." And then everybody said, "Oh, yeah, it was probably from the PT." So the goals are, Tzvi is not going to drive a car tomorrow or necessarily zip up his jacket. But that was seismic, because on top of already losing so much control over his own desire to go somewhere or be somewhere, once he could not use the controller, he was stuck. He was absolutely, completely dependent on someone's walking with him and running the controller for him. So just getting that back was amazing. There are small miracles out there, and that was a small miracle. At one point, my daughter said to me, let's just stop. We don't have the money for it. And I said, we can't stop. We did actually stop. One of the kids has a wonderful, wonderful therapist who doesn't take insurance, but he was just the right fit for that person. And he charged $500 a session. And I was putting it on my credit card. And, credit cards come home to roost.
Yep.
So at one point I said, "We can't do this anymore." He said, let's do twice a month. Then we went to once a month. And you know what? That family member had a very, very bad episode that required hospitalization and required to spend almost 6 months recovering from not being able to have that therapy. When we had the Chesed Fund, the initial campaign that is ongoing but has really lost a lot of oomph, I was able to pay off the credit cards. I was able to pay off the therapists. And so we're sort of at base zero and maybe able to pay for the aids for another 4, 5, or 6 weeks. I'm afraid to look at the Chesed Fund total. I'm just taking out the money. I'm not looking, honestly, I'm afraid to look. I'm looking very forward to December 28th and hoping that will help.
So tell us about December 28th. And again, just to tell us what the goal is. What the goal is monthly, annually, and what you need overall.
So we're looking to garner a lot of community support from maybe people in Bergen County who don't know about us. Everyone in our generation, Moshe, basically knows about us.
Maybe, but I'm not.
There are young people.
I'm not so sure about that.
I would say also that people in our shul know about, like people in Beth Aaron know about the Herzfelds. People in other shuls do not necessarily.
I agree with Rivka, by the way.
And I do not know. Well, I think that in trying to seek money from community leaders, I think that other shuls and other rabbis have probably been approached, but
not remember, you're not there. You're not there.
I don't
congregate.
Not their kehillah.
Right.
So, and the answer is, I think that Rivka's correct. I think that I think there was a campaign a long time ago, a few years ago, but I don't think it was a mass campaign. It was kind of more
correct.
It was more, a couple good families, very special people stepped forward.
And by the way, we don't know. We asked not to know who was donating what, because at the beginning, everyone was very enthusiastic. Oh, you know what? This person gave $10,000. I don't want to know, because first of all, it's a higher quality of tzedakah for them, but also, again, because it is not easy to accept money from people. I felt that it would be very uncomfortable for all of us to maybe look someone in the face and feel, oh, I owe you $100,000 debt. Like, I just wanted to meet people at an equal footing. And it could be someone who sits next to me in shul or behind. I don't want to know. Could be the kid who's, that I teach this kid and his parent. I don't want to know. So I don't know what exactly the community support has been, but I think, Moshe, also, it's not just the Bergen County community. I think we're a lot for the Bergen County community's shoulders. And what we're trying to do is reach out to other communities. We've invited ourselves, we've solicited rabbis in East Brunswick, in Passaic, in Philadelphia.
Some of whom have told us, no, thank you, this is not what our shul does. Because why? Because
They're not a family in their community.
we're not a family in their community. But if Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh LaZeh, if all of Bnei Yisrael is supposed to help each other, then why aren't I your family? If you're going to help somebody in Bat Yam, but you're not going to help somebody in Teaneck, then I don't really know what to say. And also, I think
That's a good point.
I would love, right now, as I told you, it's about $5,630 a week to pay the aides. It's about $3,000 a week to pay for uninsured therapy bills. I don't know if you're aware, Moshe, because Arthur doesn't come to shul that often, but I would tell you that he has surgery about 4 times a year on his leg. And so either he's anticipating a surgery or something, an infection is brewing in his leg that's making him feel very ill and putting him in danger. He's going to the surgery and then he's recovering from the surgery. And so we as a family, we try very hard to bandy together to be very, very unified in saying, okay, and believe me, I don't want any medals for this. We're all adults. My baby is 25, right? So we're all adults here. No birthday presents, no Hanukkah presents, because all of that money, it is very nice to get a new shirt or a bracelet. All of that money needs to go to pay for the aides. I've gotten some money from Heichal parents for Hanukkah, for Pesach. I say, Baruch Hashem, there's $180. That's going, I didn't know where I was going to get the money to pay for the aid this week. There's $180 that can go to pay for the aid. So our needs are huge. I wouldn't be able to calculate for you now what the needs are.
I'm sorry.
They're huge.
I also want to mention that someone who shall remain nameless mentioned that, oh, well, it's a big house. And I mean, we need it to be a big house because we need for 4 to 5 scooters to be able to mosey about there. And someone said, oh, well, maybe turn off your lights or maybe, don't have your scooter plugged in all the time. And we had a PSCNG assessor come and look at the entire house, and he had a report. And he said, for the size of this house, for the amount of people that are in the house, and all of the equipment that you need, he said, I'm surprised that your bill isn't more. He said, this is actually exactly the sweet spot where you should be. So,
and it is hurtful, I want to say, to be judged and to have an overseer say to me, why is your electric bill this high? And for me to have to send a very lengthy email explaining what all of our electrical needs are and justifying the fact that, Arthur and I were raised and raise our children. You leave the room, shut the light. And when the bill got high, we freaked out. We were unplugging the iPhone chargers because it's taking electricity. So it's humiliating and demoralizing to have to defend one's self for living the right lifestyle. So by the way, the PSE&G assessor did note that the insulation is a problem in the roof, and that's taking a lot of heat out of the house in the winter. And
so our
AC.
windows are garbage.
Oh, it's freezing cold in the house right now. The windows don't stay closed. It's a kind of bizarre situation. We can close the window, push it up, lock the locks, and then a day later, the window has fallen by about an inch or 2. So those are problems right now.
I think you've made the case. Okay. I don't think we need to go too far. So I'm just gonna say thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for your interest.
Thank you.
You're so just happy to be here.
Can I just say one other thing, if that's okay? In Parsha, I think it's Parsha Re'eh, there is a line that really cut me so deeply this past year, and it was almost hurtful to sit in shul. And I'm a shul person. I love going to shul.
And Re'eh is your butt. That's what Parsha.
Shul is my happy place. But there is a line that says that people should give tzedakah, that people should give charity to people. That you give somebody what he needs. And different parshanim, different commentators have different understandings of what that means. But we're not asking for a vacation. We're not asking for, front row seat concert ticket. This is all, those things are very nice, but this is real kitchen table issue type stuff. We can't even all sit at a kitchen table.
When we were able, one of the beautiful things about my husband is that he is a tremendous Baal tzedakah. And when we were able, we gave tzedakah without question. Anybody who walked into the door, anybody who saw a menorah and came to the door, anybody who needed anything, Arthur pulled out a checkbook. And I wish that I were still at that end of the checkbook, in the writing instead of the receiving. But it did give us a good feeling to know that we could help people when we were able to. But now I feel as though we're not only not able to help other people, right now we're not able to help ourselves. And we do need help.
Okay. So you're asking the community to step up. Okay. I'm here helping you amplify that, and hopefully we'll be successful. Hopefully you'll see it'll be a good few months for the Herzfeld family.
We hope
Thank
so.
you. We hope so. It should be it's Kislev, and it's, it should be a month of light. It should be a month in which people can see the light that we can give and not just take, and that, miracles.
A month of
It's a
Nisim.
month of miracles.
Nisim.
Thanks for being with us on the Jewish Link Pitch Meeting podcast. If you would like to participate or be in touch with us in any way, please email us at editor@jewishlink.news and follow us and find our podcast wherever you find podcasts.